Hello again, Year 6. It's Mrs. Farrell again from Heath Lane Academy. Today what I want to do is focus on the second lesson in the 3 that you're looking at, preparing you to join us in September. And in this lesson we're going to look at recapping how much you can remember about the story of the Iliad and who Homer was and what happened to some of those characters from last lesson. But then we're going to look at a very short little extract from the Iliad that describes the character Paris of Troy. And I'm going to focus on annotation and analysis skills. So skills that you really need when you look at a text and you write about what we can learn from it and how the writer has done that. So before we move on to that, you'll see 5 questions in front of you. If you can have a go at these 5 questions, and if you pause this particular recording in 5 minutes, I will come back to you and then you will have the opportunity to hear me go through the answers so you can check them. Okay, so pause this video recording right now, 5 minutes, and then I will give you the answers. Okay, so hopefully you've had your 5 minutes, you paused this recording. If we look at these answers, hopefully you have remembered quite a lot of this information. So ordinarily when we're in class, we do something called cold calling, which means I might ask certain individuals rather than you putting your hands up to tell me what you thought the answer was, to see what you could remember. And we'd usually expect you to answer in a full sentence as well. So maybe your teacher might want to do that. If not, here are the answers. So number 1, can you name the 2 epic poems written by Homer? So in your answer, you should have the 2 epic poems written by Homer are the Iliad and the Odyssey. Give yourself a tick if you got it correct. Number 2, who is the character whose face is said to have launched 1,000 ships? Your answer should be the character whose face is said to have launched 1,000 ships is Helen of Sparta or Troy, because remember, she is taken by Paris of Troy because Aphrodite promises him to her after the apple asks who's the fairest. Then number 3, which character wears Achilles' armour into battle and is killed by Hector? The character that wears Achilles' armour into battle and is killed by Hector is his best friend Patroclus. Number 4, how does Achilles die and why? Your answer should be Achilles dies by having an arrow shot into his heel. This is possible because when he was a baby, he was protected by his mother by being dipped into the river Hippocrene. However, she held him by the ankle, so that bit was unprotected. And finally, number 5, how long is the Trojan War? Your answer should be the Trojan War lasts 10 years. Give yourself a mark out of 5 and well done if you remembered all of them. So if you go on to the next slide in a moment, we're going to start looking at how we annotate and analyse. So we read for meaning and understanding. Okay, well done with the do now. Okay, Year 6. As I said in my previous slide, we're going to focus on annotation and analysis skills. So I'm just going to read out those couple of paragraphs there that I've written and explain why these are important. So in English, reading for deeper meaning and understanding is really, really important. It's vital as a skill to success. It's something you will do a lot of during your lessons. My favourite word is why. If somebody says to me, well, I think this, I'll be like, well, why? What tells you that? How has the writer shown you that? And that's really, really important. And that's what we're focusing on in this lesson. So, for example, why that's important is you can give your personal interpretation, your ideas, and you say what you think the writer's trying to suggest. And at GCSE, that's really, really important because in the language and the literature papers, you're expected to pick out information from language, fiction, non-fiction, poetry, plays, novels, and also comment on structure and language and how it's used for effect, trying to think about multiple, so different interpretations that only you think of would be really, really useful, as long as you can back it up. So how do we do this then? So what you'd see on the slide is you should see a quotation. Excuse me. And the quotation says, "The merciless iced east winds that knife us." If you press the mouse now, or your teacher does, you'll see that a little thought bubble comes up. And it says, what does it connote? And the word connote means, what does it suggest? What does it make you think? What comes to mind from the words that the writer has used? And in this case, about the weather and the conditions that are being described. So I just want you to pause the recording for a couple of minutes and either make some notes or discuss it with your teachers or parents, wherever you're doing this, and think about what words in that quotation there are being used, and what do they suggest, for example, about the weather, in particular the wind that is being described. So just pause this for a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, so having paused it for a couple of minutes, I'm hoping you've had a chance to think, write some notes, discuss with your teacher or your parents or a friend what your thoughts are. So if you now click the mouse again, you'll see a first box will appear on the left-hand side underneath the word merciless. So when you annotate and analyse a quotation, a text, whatever it may be, you need to look in loads of detail at what that word suggests and why the writers used it. So in that first box, I've identified that merciless, to describe the winds is an adjective. It's describing the winds, so it's a describing word. So the adjective merciless suggests that the wind has no mercy, so it has no feelings of sorry. It isn't bothered how much it's hurting people and isn't concerned about the pain it's causing. So in terms of the weather and the wind, it's suggesting that the wind's almost human, and it's like not really worried about how much pain it causes the people that it's swirling around or hitting into or blowing over. It has no mercy. It doesn't feel sorry for its actions. If you click the mouse again, another box will appear and you'll see that that highlights iced and east. These are also adjectives because they're still describing words, describing the winds. And these further emphasize, so emphasize means to make it stand out, makes it more obvious. So these further emphasize the bitterness of the wind, so how cold and bitter and really harsh it is on your skin and your face. So imagine yourself in a really cold winter's December sort of day, and the wind and the snow is hitting you in the face, and it actually hurts you. It makes your skin go red because you're cold, and also it actually makes your skin tingle and hurt. So by adding merciless, iced, and east all together suggests that it really creates this negative impression of how cold and freezing the wind is, making us understand that it's not a very positive image. So if you click the final box should appear, and on that particular box it talks about that the whole example uses something called personification. Now I'm sure you know what that means, but I'll just explain briefly. So personification is when you make something that isn't human, so like the wind in our example, act as if it is human. So in our example, we see that the wind is given feelings. It's made to sound merciless. Now, wind's not human. It can't have feelings. It doesn't feel sorry or not sorry or happy or sad. But in this example, it's supposed to be merciless. It's also described as if it is knifing us. So wind doesn't have hands, it can't hold a weapon, it can't hold the knife. So again, it's as if it's got something that it is attacking us within the poem. This is the us who is being spoken about. And therefore, it's as if the wind is like a person being personified that is no remorse, no feelings of guilt, not bothered how much pain it causes, and it's attacking us, it's coming at us, hurting us, and it's really cold. Now, this is how you annotate a quotation. And when we analyze something, it means you pull it apart, you look for deeper meaning. And the more you can write about a little quotation, so a lot about a little, is really, really useful. when you're analysing a text. Okay, on the next slide you will see an extract, and you'll see this on your worksheet as well, which hopefully you'll see attached to this, or your teacher has already printed off for you. And I'm going to ask you as I go through this to actually make the notes around your extract, around your example. So we're going to use these annotation skills and we're going to add them to a bigger piece of writing from the Iliad. Okay, so if you want to move on to the next slide. Okay then, year 6. So now we know what annotation and analysis skills actually mean. We're going to try and apply it to a little bit from the Iliad, as I said. So first of all, I'm just going to read out the little extract that's in front of you. And it might seem a little strange because remember, the Iliad was written and then translated from Greek into English many, many years ago. So don't get too worried about some of the terms and the language choices, because it will be the same in the Odyssey, but I assure you, whoever your English teacher is will make sure you understand the main important pieces that you need to know. And nobody knows exactly what everything means, just like when we study Shakespeare. So don't stress about that too much. Okay, so let's read it through. Now front to front the hostile armies stand, eager of fight and only wait command. When to the van before the sons of fame who Troy sent forth, the beauteous Paris came, in form a god. The panther's speckled hide flowed over his armour with an easy pride. His bended bow across his shoulders flung, his sword beside him negligently hung. 2 pointed spears he shook with gallant grace, and dared the bravest of the Grecian race. So normally what we would do in a lesson is we'd be saying, what things stand out to you in that? What sort of words, phrases, anything that comes out of that particular extract that makes you visualize, see something, makes you think of a certain idea or makes you feel a certain way. So on this slide, you will see that I've put different colours on certain examples and underlined them and put them in bold already. So as we go through, I will indicate when you need to press the button on your mouse or your computer to move on so that the information appears on the screen as I'm talking. And then using the worksheet, which has this extract on and empty boxes around it, we are going to annotate this together. Now, normally in class, it'd be more of a sort of question and answer. What do you think? Why do you think that? Obviously, we can't do that quite as well at the moment. So it's more me talking to you, getting your ideas, explaining how we go about it. However, if your teacher wants to pause it, or your parent or yourself, and you want to have a go at writing some ideas yourself, then please do that, and then come back and have a look and make the notes afterwards. Okay. So if you click the first button, the first one that should appear is hostile armies stand. So hostile means the idea of not very nice, sort of hatred. If you're hostile towards somebody, you're not very warm or welcoming. So hostility means you might be quite cold-hearted, you might turn away, you might look at them a little bit funny. Obviously, in terms of a battle, hostile is going to be much more physical in a battle. So it's not just negative emotions, it's the idea that now the Greeks and the Trojans are face to face in a battle. So imagine an old-fashioned battle in ancient Greece, face to face, loads of people with shields and spears and swords, all in armour, waiting for that command. They're waiting for their general or their king, whoever's leading them, to say attack. And so they're face to face with a big gap in the middle and they're ready to charge. And they're being described as hostile because neither side really likes each other. So if we were looking at language, we might zoom in on that adjective, hostile. Okay, so the second one, if you press the button again, you'll see in purple there, it says eager of fight. Now you've got these two armies face to face, they're all ready to fight, they're all full of energy, ready to go, full of adrenaline. So the word eager to describe them being ready is suggesting that they are just waiting for somebody to go, off you go, attack. They know why they're there, they know that this is their role, and they are willing to go into battle full of energy, full of hatred, despite the fact that they could die for their country, but they're willing to do it. So they're waiting on this command, and when to the van before the sons of fame whom Troy sent forth, the beauteous Paris came in form a god. So that red bit now, if you press the button again, you should see that I'm writing about the fact that we are introduced to Paris. Now remember, Paris of Troy is the Trojan soldier who took, through Aphrodite's promise, remember, Helen off Menelaus, which started a lot of this battle nearly 10 years ago, because this Iliad story, remember, is the 9th year of the 10-year Trojan War. So this is right at the end, and Paris is there now leading his Trojan army. So he comes out and stands in front of his soldiers. They're looking to him, waiting for that command. And we're introduced to that character using the adjective beauteous. It allows us to visualize him. If somebody's described as beautiful, beauteous, or word beauty, typically we might think of a female, stereotypically. However, it's a really positive adjective which suggests that they're almost heroic, they are looked up to, they're admired. So he's like a heroic, strong warrior. And then when it uses that metaphor in form of God, he is being compared to a god, as if he's almost worshipped by the others, and almost like his skills are like a god's power. So remember, the ancient Greeks gods had loads of power. By comparing Paris to being like a god and how he stands in front of his army, it's making him seem undefeatable, completely strong, worshipped, and ready to give that order to be going into battle. Hopefully making sense so far. Obviously, please pause this at any time if you need to, replay it, or ask your teacher if you're in school to go over something. Okay, so the next one, you've got those 4 lines where it describes what Paris is wearing. So if you press the button again, you should see that Panther's speckled hide flowed over his armour with an easy pride. His bended bow across his shoulders flung, his sword beside him negligently hung. So it's describing the weaponry that he's holding. So he's got like a bow and arrow over his shoulder, and then he's got a sword that's negligently hanging by him. And negligently means sort of like without a care, without a worry, as if it's part of him, as if he's used to it. But obviously at any moment he could unsheath that sword and go into battle as that strong, godlike warrior he's being described as. The fact that he's described with this panther's speckled hide, which means like he has probably hunted and killed a panther, and this hide, the skin of the panther, is now over his armour as almost like a prize, a trophy. So the fact that he's hung there over Paris's shoulder and it's easy pride suggests that he's proud of what he's done, but also if he's at ease and the sword is just there, part of him, he's at ease and confident in battle. So far we're looking at language choices and zooming in on what we can learn about Paris, what we can learn about the soldiers and the situation, and the last 2 lines. So if you press your button again to move on to the box so that it appears in green there, 2 pointed spears he shook with gallant grace and dared the bravest of the Grecian race. So he's almost trying to scare them, call their bluff, and he's almost sort of like shouting at them, and he's shaking his shield and his spears at them and saying, come on then, come and fight me. So he's ready, he's confident, and that gallant grace suggests that there's like a smoothness to his actions, as if he is comfortable, confident there, and he's feeling brave and strong because he's daring even the bravest of the Greeks to come and fight him. So this would be an example how we might annotate. The notes that I've put on are quite detailed so that you can see them and you can obviously look at this slide and make those notes around your copies. However, if we were annotating a text in English, we'd do it there and then, and we'd have it under a visualizer and we'd write notes around it. I'd get your ideas, we'd put them all together, and then we'd do some work on it. And you need to realize that we don't always need to write this much detail. I've just made it really quite clear and detailed to help you today. Okay, so I hope that's helped. So the task that I'm going to ask you to do is on the next slide. So if when you're ready and you feel as if you've understood what I've just said, then please move on to the next slide. Okay then, ladies and gents, so this is the task that you can have a go at as a follow-up to practice some of these skills in trying to write about what you've annotated. So at Heath Lane, once we'd annotated and got our ideas, we'd probably look at answering a question and turning those notes into what we call what, how, why, or PEE paragraphs, so point, evidence, explanation, which is a key skill. So you'll see the question in front of you that says, how does Homer use language to describe Paris of Troy? So from that extract we've just looked at, you're going to consider what is said about Paris, how Homer writes about him, and what that suggests to us as the readers. So what I've just been talking about, you're going to put into a paragraph. So what are the important words in the question? So it might seem really odd, but the most important word is how. Because you need to actually focus on not just what Homer is saying. So don't just write and tell me or your teachers next year, well, Homer describes him like this, this and this, and you quote it without saying why. What is the effect of using certain words, certain language choices? So that's why we have the what do you think? You say how you feel, what you think. You can learn about Paris in this case. How is it done? What evidence is there to back it up? And then why? What is the effect on you as the reader? You'll then see that there's two arrows pointing to language and Paris of Troy. So everything you write about must be focused on language only. You don't need to talk about anything else. And also focus just on Paris in that extract. Because we talked about the army as well being ready to fight, but then it introduces Paris. So we don't need those first two little bits. We only need when it talks about Paris. So make sure when you get a question like this that you always remember what, how, why, and that you make sure you fully understand the focus of the question, what it's asking you to write about. So if you click your mouse or your button, or your teacher does, you'll see that an example paragraph appears. That's also on your worksheet so that you can see it in front of you. And you'll see it's got slightly different colours. So in the sort of dark blue colour to begin with on the slide, it says, Homer describes Paris of Troy as a highly respected and admired warrior and someone who seems confident in battle. That's your what. That's the point. That's what you think. And that's what we just discussed, that Paris seems really well liked, he's admired, and he seems quite confident. You then need to back that up with the how and the why, and you'll see that I've put those two together. So the next bit, all in black, is actually your explanation, but those bits in green are your evidence. And you'll notice that the evidence is what we call embedded quotations. So it fits into the sentence and makes sense so that as you read it, it flows. So you don't have to put, and here's a quote to support it. Try and incorporate it if you can. You'll also notice that the black bit there is the longest bit. Your why, your explanation of the effects is the most important bit. Excuse me. So let me read this through. For example, the use of the adjective beauteous to describe Paris suggests that he is handsome to look at and almost admired by others. So you've provided your evidence. You've also named it as an adjective, which is a real skill that we look for. If you can't remember whether it's an adjective, metaphor, simile, whatever, just say by using this word or by using this phrase. But make sure you provide your evidence in quotation marks and then you explain why it's been used. So it suggests he's handsome, almost admired. Then I've put another idea. So I've used a connective phrase, furthermore. So you could have furthermore, in addition, another way. All of those phrases would work. So furthermore, the use of the metaphor inform a god emphasizes, which makes it stand out, remember, the admiration others have for him, almost worshipping him. It could be inferring, which means like suggesting, that Paris is so powerful and strong in battle that he is godlike, undefeatable and divine. So once again, we're using that explanation to explain what in form of God suggests. So remember, what, how, why. So using the notes and what we've discussed, and then using the planning sheet that hopefully you can view or your teacher's downloaded for you, it's your turn. I want you to try and use another piece of evidence about Paris of Troy that we discussed in that extract, and they're all on the worksheet to help you, and try and write your own what, how, why paragraph. So have a go, try your best. And remember, this is a really key skill that we will constantly be working through and will lead you to being able to use them beautifully when it comes to GCSE. So don't worry if you're not quite sure right now. It's just letting you know we do this quite a lot and that it's a really important skill. So trying it now will mean that you're going to get better over the years so that you can really nail it when it comes to GCSE. Good luck, and I hope you get on okay.